This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And lucky you folks, you have arrived right here on Creep Street. Welcome one, welcome all.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get started real quick. Of course, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod. We also have a TikTok. Mo's always doing fun things over there.
Oh, you know.
On our Facebook, we have a separate page called Citizens of the Milky Way, a Creep Street fan page. Anyone is welcome to join that. Just click the Let Me In button. One of us will let you in.
Yeah.
Just a place where, daily we like to interact with our listeners. Folks will post stories, memes, articles,
ask questions. It's any fun sort of thing going on over there.
Yeah, and we always let the audience know. We let them know a few days beforehand what the episode's going to be, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Real fun stuff. And of course, if once a week is not enough.
And I just think it's probably not.
I think you're joshing yourself
Yeah.
if you think it is, folks. So head on over to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast for all sorts of goodies. We got 3 different tiers. Find the one that's right for you. No matter which one it is, there's going to be great stuff waiting for you.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Maureen.
Yep.
Last week we gave them mysterious blob entities.
I mean, dang, what in the ding-dong hell is even going on with those guys?
I mean, that was wacky. I mean, that was weird. People loved it, though.
Oh, yeah.
People reached out, told us how much they liked the episode.
People love a good whack attack.
So glad we could provide that for them. But today,
Yeah.
Maureen, I'm very excited, yet a little nervous.
Yeah.
You've prepared us one hell of a story. It's part haunting,
Yeah.
part true crime.
Yeah.
Maureen, what is it we're talking about today?
Everyone, today we are talking about the ghost and the monster.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Today, we are talking about some intense stuff in today's episode. And, listeners, longtime listeners of the pod will know that we don't always give warnings up top. We don't always do the trigger warning just because we often feel like the title of the episode kind of lets you know what to expect and whatnot.
Exactly.
But every once in a while, just to be clear, in situations like this, we want to give you a little bit of an extra little warning.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's very well warranted in this case.
Yeah, this one has a lot to do with... this one is a lot. It's very fascinating. I am excited to do this episode, but there's going to be some torture in here. There's going to definitely be some, physical and psychological fuckery.
Yes.
And as well as sexual assault.
Absolutely, and it is not pretty stuff. So
Yeah.
Fair warning up top, this one will get pretty intense.
Pretty intense. And of course, we're never gonna be like gross or anything like that. We always want to approach these topics and all of our topics, but especially in these situations, with the gravity of what really happened.
Exactly.
And to really empower and uplift the victim and the victim's families, and to say a big ol' fuck you to the goddamn predator.
Yes, to the people responsible for this.
Yeah.
But with that said, Maureen, please take it away.
Okay, so I'm actually gonna pop off with my sources at the end of the episode today, just because I feel like some of the titles of the sources here might give some stuff away if some people don't really know about this story, don't want to give it away. So we'll list off the sources at the end of the episode.
Very good thinking, Maureen.
Thank you very much, Dylan Hackworth. All right, our story starts in sunny California with one little lady named Jodie Foster.
Okay.
Now, hold on. This isn't Silence of the Lambs, Panic Room, Jodie Foster.
Okay.
Those were the first two movies I thought of with Jodie in them. This is just another lovely woman named Jodie Foster, but not the actress. So, Jodie Foster was born in Orange County, California, and had a daughter of her own named Hannah in 1997. She was a single mom and was looking for a place to start her family with her daughter, and she settled on Chico, California.
Okay.
You know, a beautiful college town, very fun, cool, but still quaint. You know, just like a great place to raise a family. It's like, you know, kind of in Northern California, gorgeous part of the world. I mean, we love it.
Absolutely.
And in Chico, she saw that there was an apartment for rent, and it, you know, seemed like a nice apartment. There was a pool. You know, it just seemed like a great place. So when Jodie was 33 and her daughter was 3, they moved into this lovely apartment on January 31st, 2000. Now, as soon as they moved in, though, you know, even though everything seemed to be perfect, the vibes were off.
Okay.
The vibes were off.
Instantly, huh? They could just tell.
Sometimes you enter a place and it's just not, you know? So the place, you know, it didn't feel peaceful. And as soon as they moved in, Jodie just had this terrible feeling that something awful was going to happen.
Oh, so right when they move in.
Yeah, which is interesting because oftentimes with hauntings, it kind of takes a little bit.
Yeah.
But this she felt right away. She just had a weird feeling. It felt dark. There was like a weird chemically smell. It was just weird. And Jodie couldn't really understand why she felt this way.
Interesting, the chemical smell. It must have been something other than, because, you know, if you're moving into a new apartment, usually building management will clean down.
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon. You come in, you might smell a little bit of Clorox or just,
yeah.
You know, they're cleaning the place, but I'm assuming this must have smelled a little different.
A little bit of a different, not just like cleaning products, more just like something wasn't right.
I see.
And you know, like I said before, you know, Jodie couldn't understand why she was feeling this way. I mean, she was excited to be moving here, to, you know, be starting this new wonderful chapter with her daughter in Chico, you know? She was ready to start a nice, peaceful life. But sometimes things don't go according to plan.
No, they do not.
So Jodie's daughter Hannah had a pair of pink shoes that were always kept by the front door, so that whenever they were, you know, running out, the shoes were just right there, throw them on, you're out the door. But one day, they couldn't find these pink shoes anywhere. They were looking around the apartment, couldn't find them, and then all of a sudden, they found them in the middle of the bed.
Interesting.
And Jodie knew that she didn't do it, and Hannah was very, very adamant that it wasn't her either. And this continued to happen over and over and over again.
Makes me think of the Stratford Poltergeist, which we
Yeah.
just did, where it would lay their clothes out on the bed.
yeah.
And then, of course, later it would then, like, the clothes would, like, animate. And, fill it. But anyway.
Right.
But it reminds me of that, yeah.
Yeah. That wasn't all. The salt and pepper shakers would be, you know, at the center of the table when they went to bed at night. And when they woke up in the morning, they would be at the very edge of the table.
Huh.
Soon after that, Jodie started to have very vivid, strange dreams. She had a dream that she saw a young woman walking down a road in Chico, and that a young couple pulled up to her and asked her if she wanted a ride. And then she could see a man coming up behind the young woman and putting something over her mouth.
Okay, this was a dream?
This was a dream.
Okay.
At least for me, I feel like I'm usually like in my dreams. So it's a little strange that she's just in her dreams dreaming about these 3 other people.
That's a good point. That's something I hadn't thought of before.
Yeah.
About dreams is I've never really stopped it because a lot of times, if I have a dream, I'm in it.
Yeah.
I'm sure maybe I don't know. I would have to think if there's ever been a time where I've dreamed where I wasn't necessarily in it.
Right.
Yeah, that's
so I don't
interesting.
know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that is a thing that happens commonly to other people or what. I don't know, but that's what was happening. So Jodie was, having these very strange dreams. But then one day, Hannah, out of nowhere, just goes, "Hi." And Jodie's like, "Oh, like, who are you talking to? What's going on?" And Hannah's like, "I'm talking to that girl right there." And Jodie, thought that maybe someone had walked past the window or something like that. And she was like, "No, this girl, she's sitting right there. She has a white shirt on." And, Jodie had no idea what Hannah was talking about. And Hannah called her MarLiz. And according to Hannah, Hannah really didn't think anything of it when these things would happen, when she would see MarLiz, because she just thought it was the same as when any other friend would come over or anything like that. Any other person would come over.
Okay, all right.
And even though this person she was seeing was older than Hannah, it's just at the time, you don't think about the ages of people. So she just, was thinking she was just a friend. Then, one day, Jodie and Hannah go out to dinner, and they come home and they find that the receiver end of the phone, like the part of the phone you actually, talk into, was taken off of the phone that was hanging on the wall. And they find the receiver from the phone in a back bedroom. And then they also see that a bunch of Hannah's toys are all put together in a pile with her Ernie doll on top, like Ernie from Sesame Street.
Right.
And the Ernie doll is on top with a little noose tied around its neck.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Bert sounds pissed.
Yeah, Bert's upset. I mean, Bert is a person of interest.
I mean, clearly.
Yeah. So clearly, this really freaked Jodie out. So she immediately grabbed Hannah, they ran out the door, and they called the police. The police took a report on it, but they, didn't really take this seriously. They just were like, "Oh, okay, like, bye."
Right.
Then, one night in February, so keep in mind, they moved in at the end of January. All of this has already happened, and they've only been there for less than a month. So one night in February, Jodie wakes up and hears the static on the TV in the living room. And there was no remote to this TV. This was one of the TVs that you would have to go up and turn it on. So she's like, "What is this? This is insane."
So essentially a medieval torture device.
Oh, come on. You need a remote.
Might as well be the Iron Maiden, for God's sake.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes we had a TV without a remote growing up, and that was mainly because I think we lost our remote and just never got around to getting a new one, but it sucked.
Oh, boy.
It sucked. But that's not all. It wasn't just not having a remote. It was also that the burners were on high, cabinets were flapping all about, and the Ernie doll kept saying, "I feel great," over and over and over again.
I feel great.
And this was an Ernie doll that was battery powered and said that.
My aunt and uncle had the same Ernie for their kids.
Oh,
and
I know
would always
exactly.
go off. There are such funny stories. I won't tell them now.
Maybe on the Patreon.
Maybe on the Patreon, I'll tell you some hilarious but spooky stories that my aunt and uncle had while having these for their kids, all these Sesame Street toys.
Oh, yeah.
That would just talk on their own and stuff. Oh, my God.
Scary as hell.
So scary, but some of them pretty funny, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sure. But this Ernie doll kept going, "I feel great, over and over again. And so Jodie takes the batteries out of the Ernie doll, but it continued to go off. So this doll had no batteries in it, and it's just going, "I feel great, I feel great, I feel great."
Oh, man.
And then all of the sudden, all of the lights come on in the apartment. And Jodie was like, no. So she grabs Hannah and goes to her neighbor, who also was the manager of the apartment complex.
Okay.
And she's like, hey, something is wrong. So the manager, she goes over, she picks up her little poodle, you gotta love a little poodle, and goes over to Jodie and Hannah's apartment. They enter the apartment and the dog immediately starts barking like crazy.
Uh-oh, things are adding up.
Yeah, come on. And there was a cord from a lamp and it was swinging around like a jump rope. Yeah.
Wow. Very freaky.
Yeah. So after they all saw this, everyone's freaking out and they all run out of the apartment. Now at this point, it's about 6 a.m. and Jodie is just sitting by the pool crying. I mean, she is so upset. This is so scary. She doesn't know what to do. And it's then that another neighbor from the apartment complex walks by. I can't imagine just like walking by at 6 a.m., but that says more about me, you know? Come on, I love to sleep in. So she's sitting by the pool, just crying, just so upset when another neighbor walks by. And he's a neighbor that has been there for years and years and, you know, he's lived there forever. And he's like, you know, nobody stays in that apartment for long. And Jodie's like, well, what do you mean? And he goes on to explain that there used to be someone that lived in that apartment, in that unit, and that he couldn't remember her name, but that she went missing while she lived there and has never been seen again.
Okay.
So this really kind of piques Jodie's interests, you know, she puts that in her back pocket, as it were. But Jodie's dreams would continue. She would continue to see this young woman with dark hair, and that she would be in a basement with a couple, but this basement really felt like a dungeon. She could see a big logging hook hanging from the ceiling.
Ugh, okay.
And she also saw this couple doing really sadistic, sexually abusive, creepy things to this woman. And these dreams were really intense and they really freaked Jodie out and they were giving her a ton of anxiety.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it would.
And Jodie didn't want Hannah to have to deal with this. So after only 3 months, they moved out of the apartment and moved into another one in Chico. And after they moved out, the activity stopped and they felt so much better. And they thought, you know what, that was that. Who the hell knows what was going on in that apartment? But you know what, we got out. What can you do?
Right.
So then Jodie ended up dating someone. And this man was, you know, out there reading books, which you got to do. We love it. And he found a book called The Perfect Victim. And he excitedly tells Jodie all about this book that he found. And in the book, it talks about what really happened and who this woman was that lived in the apartment that went missing. And in the book, it says that the woman that lived in their apartment was named MarLiz.
Ah.
And Jodie immediately is like, oh my God, my Liz.
Yeah.
Wow. So she, you know, goes to Hannah and she's like, hey, do you remember my Liz? And Hannah's like, for sure. So she shows Hannah a photo of MarLiz, and Hannah's like, yeah, that's my Liz. That's the girl from the old apartment. So Jodie's like, oh my God.
Holy shit. Okay.
So MarLiz, who is this person? What is going on?
Right.
Thankfully, they have the book, The Perfect Victim, so they can find out. MarLiz, also known as Marie Elizabeth Spanicky, she went by MarLiz because it's like the beginning of Marie and the, you know, part of Elizabeth. So yeah. MarLiz, you got to have fun with your name.
Absolutely.
You got to pop off.
Of course.
God bless. So MarLiz, she was from Cleveland, Ohio, and she was the second of 5 kids. She was pretty, smart, friendly. Everyone loved her. You know, just a classic Midwestern gal.
Amen.
She had beautiful curly brown hair and gorgeous blue eyes. A great combo.
Absolutely.
You'll love to hear it. She really had a passion and a desire to be an actor. So that was just something that she always kind of hoped for and dreamed for and hoped that there was a way she could make that happen. So when MarLiz turned 18, she got a job at a camera store and she started dating her manager. Yikes, but different time.
Different time.
Come on. Who was a little bit older than her, but once again, what can you do? Named John Baruth. And John Baruth, he was living in Ohio, working for this camera company store situation. But he was from California originally, and after they had been dating a little bit, he said that he wanted to move back to California and asked MarLiz if she wanted to join him. And she's like, California? You know, like, I want to be an actor. Like, this is great. And, you know, like, I love this guy. So, like, this, you know, yeah, let's go.
All right.
So they make their plans and they move to his hometown of Chico, California.
All right.
Which is absolutely nowhere near LA.
Exactly.
You know, whatever. I don't know if she knew that and she thought like, oh, you know, it's California, it's closer than Ohio, or if she was confused. I don't know. But regardless, Chico is not near LA, but who cares? So MarLiz, though, was having a little bit of a difficult transition to her new life in Chico. It wasn't really all that she dreamt it would be, and she was just arguing more and more with John. And she had nobody to talk to, no one to hang out with, really, other than John.
Right.
And it's not like there were these huge fights with John or anything like that, but you know, enough that it was
spats.
You know, you still don't like it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not fun. MarLiz was actually planning on moving back home to Ohio in April. She was already had decided that this wasn't really for her, but she still was going to stay there for a little bit longer. So about 2 months after the move to Chico, MarLiz and John decide to go to a flea market together. And this is on January 31st, 1976. They're at this flea market, and while they're there, MarLiz and John get into an argument. And MarLiz is just like, you know what? Enough of this. I'm done with you. I'm walking home. I need some time.
Right.
So John is like, okay, and lets her leave. Keep in mind, it's like the middle of the day. It's not like, you know.
Okay.
I don't know the details of the situation, you know, if this was one of those times where she said, you know, like, I'm walking home, leave me alone, and she actually wanted him to follow her, or if she actually did want to be alone. You know, I don't know.
Right.
But, you know, it was the middle of the day in this nice area. You know, it's okay. It was not like he just, like, left her alone in the woods at night or something like that. So she leaves, she starts walking home, and John drives home, and he waits for her at the apartment. And more time goes by, and she doesn't get home. And this is suspicious as fuck, like, I don't really get it, but it wasn't until the end of the following day, so, like, she didn't come home that night, she didn't sleep there that night, anything. So the following day, he's like, something might be wrong.
Yeah, that's a little weird. Kind of fuck you, John.
Yeah, it's like, what do you mean? Like, and some people have been like, maybe he thought that she like left and went back to Ohio, but it's like all of her things were still at the apartment.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, I don't know. That just seems kind of intense. Like, what? I don't know. That just seems like a lot. So John then contacts the police and files a missing person report. And he was open and honest with the police. He was like, you know what? I was with MarLiz. We got in a fight, and then she disappeared.
Right.
And the police are like, yeah, you're fucking suspect number one. 9 times out of 10, it's the boyfriend, it's the partner, it's the girlfriend, you know, whatever. But he was eventually cleared, and the police had 0 leads on what had happened to MarLiz. It was like she just fucking disappeared.
Just vanished.
Into thin air.
Wow.
That was until 1984.
Okay, so how many years later is this?
So this happened in 76. She disappeared in 76,
okay,
and now
so
we're at 84.
8 years?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
In November of 1984, a Detective Shamblin is sent out to the Church of Nazarene. When he arrives, he sees a pastor sitting with a woman named Janice Hooker, and Janice looked extremely upset. She had been crying, very emotional, everything. And she says to Detective Shamblin that in 1976, her husband killed a woman.
Okay.
Here we go.
Starting to tie things together
Here
here.
we go. And she goes on, and as she's talking about it, it becomes clear that she's starting to incriminate herself in some shit as well. So, Detective Shamblin begins to read her Miranda rights.
Okay.
You know, you have the right to remain silent, all that shit. And once that starts happening, Janice is like, oh, actually, I'm not going to say anything else until I have a lawyer present.
Right.
So she, gets a lawyer, and they call the DA office, and the DA office is given a rundown on, the whole situation. And the DA office grants Janice immunity for her cooperation and her interview. So once this is all set in stone, the police interview Janice again. Now, during this interview, Janice says that the woman that was killed was MarLiz Spanicki.
Wow, okay.
She said that on January 31st, 1976, the same day MarLiz went missing, Janice and her husband were driving in the car and saw MarLiz walking down Mangrove Avenue. Her husband, Cameron, was driving the car and circled her a few times. And eventually, they offered MarLiz a ride.
Uh-oh.
So MarLiz gets in the car, and Cameron, Janice's husband, Cameron starts asking MarLiz a ton of questions. And MarLiz lets them know that she isn't from here and that she doesn't have any family nearby, and that really the only person she knows here is her boyfriend.
Right.
It wasn't long after that MarLiz tried to get out of the car, and Cameron put a knife to her throat and then put this box on her head. He called it a head box.
Yikes.
So what a head box is a box that has hinges on the side and a little hole at the bottom of it. And on the inside, it's lined with carpeting, with styrofoam, with all of these materials to try to make the box soundproof.
Oh, God.
And the box is also like 20 pounds.
Yeah, it's heavy.
So it's a heavy fucking box just strapped around her head, and they force her to lie down so no one will see her. They drive about 40 miles all the way back to their house in Red Bluff and pulled the car into the garage. Cameron got out of the car and gets some starter fluid and puts it on a rag. This is, ether. And then puts the rag up to MarLiz's mouth to make her semi-unconscious.
Wow.
And then they bring her inside. However, from the very beginning, as soon as MarLiz knew what was going on, that she was abducted, she was screaming. And Cameron really hated this.
Oh, boy.
So even though she was semi-unconscious as he brought her down to the basement, she soon started screaming and screaming and screaming again. So then Cameron carried MarLiz back upstairs because he wanted to take her into the bathroom and cut her vocal cords.
God, this is nasty, folks.
So he tells Janice, help me hold her down so I can cut her vocal cords. And Janice at first refused. And then he said that he would cut her vocal cords too if she didn't help him.
Oh, this is so nasty.
Yeah. So she, helps hold her down, and he takes a knife out and he starts cutting her throat. Now, why he thought he could just use like a goddamn hunting knife and be able to cut her vocal cords and not kill her.
Yeah.
I don't fucking know.
I wouldn't know the first fucking... Yeah, that's
I don't know why he
insanity.
thought this, but he, thought he was capable and he tried. And, no fucking surprise, she started bleeding a lot.
Yeah.
And so Cameron kind of is freaking out a little bit and carries MarLiz back down into the basement. A little bit later, Janice walks down into the basement and sees MarLiz hanging from a beam in the basement. And she found out that Cameron strangled her with a rope and then hung her by her neck on the rafter or the beam, and then put a pillowcase over her head. So at this point, MarLiz has passed away.
Yeah. That's so disgusting.
Yeah. So then at about 2 a.m., They take MarLiz's body back to the car, and they drive toward Lassen Park, and they, veer off onto a dirt road where they then dug a shallow grave and buried her. Cameron then burned all of her clothes and all of her belongings. And all of this happened from when they picked MarLiz up, when she was walking home, until burying her. This all took place over 10 to 12 hours.
Wow. So from the actual time they picked her up to
to her
buried.
Death. No, to her being buried.
To her being buried. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So who is Cameron?
Who is this fucking prick?
What the fuck? Okay, so Cameron Hooker was born on November 5th, 1953 in California. Not much is really known about Cameron's growing up life, his childhood, his origins, but we do know that his family moved around a lot when he was growing up because of his dad's job. But it seems like for most of his childhood, he was just kind of a normal kid. But then the family moved to Red Bluff, California when he was around 16. And this is when he really became noticeably more withdrawn, awkward, didn't connect really, and he had a lot of alone time. And also at this point, he started to really get into S&M, bondage, tying women up, that sort of thing.
Oh boy.
And this wasn't just like your kink,
Yeah, this isn't
situation.
your run-of-the-mill kink.
This isn't just out here like getting a little frisky.
Sure.
This isn't just leather, what I mean?
Gently smacking your ass with a little paddle.
Oh, come on. This was hardcore shit. He liked it because the woman had given no consent and had no control. He liked that. He liked that he was overpowering. He liked the idea of that.
Nasty.
Yeah, some dark shit. So then after he graduated high school, he got a job at the lumber mill. And then when he was about 19 years old, he meets Janice, who was 15 years old.
Okay, he was 19?
Yeah.
Okay.
So different time, but not great.
Right.
Not great. Now, Janice was from a very strict religious family, and she was often neglected and felt like she was a disappointment. Her family was actually very, very strict when it came to boys as well. But for whatever reason, her parents were very accepting of Cameron, and they allowed Janice to begin dating Cameron.
Wow.
And Cameron, did all of the classic love bombing shit. Saying how beautiful she is, how great she is, giving her flowers, whatever the fuck. But on their very first date, Cameron took Janice into the woods, undressed her, tied her to a tree, and began whipping her.
Holy shit. So when she's 15.
When she's 15 and he's 19. Cameron would continue to coerce her into doing these violent sex acts. And then afterwards, he'd, do the whole gifts and flowers and words of affirmation bullshit. So Janice never really gave her consent to this happening to her, but she kind of just went along with it because she knew how good it would be afterwards. And she really felt bad about herself. She had no real sense of self, no self-esteem, anything like that. So she was also a teenager.
Right.
So she didn't really, she couldn't quite understand that this was not acceptable for her.
Right, exactly.
When she was 16 years old, the two of them got married. And after they got married, this abuse, it just continued on. But after they were married for a little while, Janice told Cameron that she wanted a baby. And because of this, the torture of her needed to stop. So Cameron agrees, but he agrees only if he can get a sex slave of his own.
Yikes. Here we go. What a piece of shit.
Yeah, and it's not just like, he wanted to have an affair.
Right, a little something on the side.
He wanted to sleep around, all this stuff. He's like, no, I want a sex slave.
In the literal sense.
I want to kidnap a woman and keep her.
Right.
That's what he wanted. And Janice said okay. And this situation, the Janice situation, really, really deals with this whole fucking complicated ordeal of where do we draw the line? Where are you a victim?
Yes.
Where are you a perpetrator?
When does the abused become the abuser? And obviously you can be abused and be an abuser at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that line. We come to it in many things.
It sadly comes up again and again and again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Janice says yes, but she's like, you know what? You can't have penetrative sex, though, with this sex slave. Which is like, oh, thank you. That's so great. Okay, fuck you, Janice, you dumb. So Cameron's like, okay. And he starts to prepare and plan and build. And he turns their basement into a goddamn torture chamber.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he adds a beam to the ceiling where he can hang a victim. He constructed a table where he would be able to strap his victims to.
Now, from what I gather, he was rather good at carpentry, like
Yes.
actually designing these things.
Yeah,
and
he was good. He was a woodworker. What can we say?
I see. Oh, that was his like profession.
Well, no, just a little hobby. He worked in a lumber mill, but he was just a handyman kind of guy. He was one of those guys that could just fucking build shit.
I see.
Unfortunately.
Right.
So yeah, he built all this fucking vile ass shit, and it was in his basement. And then Janice had a baby girl. And Cameron said, you know what? A baby girl. And that really put things into perspective for him. And he was like, you know what? Like, now that I am a father to a daughter, I can see that this is hurtful and heinous, and I could never do something like this. I'm just kidding, that didn't happen.
The Grinch's heart grew 3 sizes that day.
But unfortunately, that's bullshit, okay?
No, Grinch is still Grinching.
Yeah, you would hope that would happen, but no. He had a baby daughter, and he just was like, okay, and this doesn't change my worldview. So Cameron then, starts talking to women, stalking women, taking their photos, all of this shit. And then in May of 1977, Janice and Cameron were out for a drive with their baby when they spot someone named Colleen Stan. Now, Colleen Stan was born in December of 1956 in Riverside, California. She had a bunch of siblings, seemed to have a good childhood from as far as, I can tell. She got married, very quickly after high school, and then she got a divorce, and she was like, you know what, I'm moving to Eugene, Oregon with my squad. I gotta start anew, I'm gonna start fresh, this is gonna be a great chapter. I mean, we love Oregon here on the pod. So she was living in Eugene in 1977, but a friend of hers was living in Westwood, California, and she decided to go down to Westwood to surprise her friend for her birthday. So, it's the day she decides to leave. She goes to her car won't start.
Oh boy.
So she's like, you know what? It's not that far. I'm gonna hitchhike there. This was the 70s. People did that shit. I highly, highly advise you to never fucking do this, though.
Yeah.
I would never.
Yeah.
And I have never, and I will never.
Hitchhiking? Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we're not blaming Colleen. That's not her fault. But we're just reminding you to not do this. So anyway, Colleen decides to hitchhike. And she actually got a good chunk of the way there. She got on with some truckers. She got pretty close. At this point, she's in California. She's hitchhiking again. And a couple cars pulled over to pick her up. And she actually said no to them and sent them on their way because she didn't feel safe with them.
Well, good for her. She could sense it.
Mm-hmm. She was like, this is weird. I don't feel comfortable. When then Cameron, Janice, and their baby pull up.
Oh, boy.
And, this is a young couple that looks, around her age-ish. That's another thing to remember. Cameron is only 3 years older than Colleen at this point. Colleen is 20. Cameron is only 23 at this point.
That's another thing to remember is he started so young.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the other thing. Colleen clearly had an instinct like she had turned away other cars.
Yeah.
Part of me wonders, is it the baby that did it?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it, yeah.
Because then you're like, oh, in a way, that sicko did use his baby as part of because it does give you an extra layer of, well, they can't be all that bad. They've got a baby.
They got a baby. And, like, they're not going to do anything to me with the baby
with
in the car.
child in the car. Yeah, so that's because I was thinking, like, how come she could tell with these other folks? And I was like, oh, I bet the baby.
It's the baby.
And the woman.
And it's a woman,
and
too.
there's a woman, like his spouse.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, that adds. It's not just one lone person, or
it's a young family that's like around her age.
Exactly.
I mean, I know whenever I take the train, I always try to sit by someone around my age. That's how I kind of, I don't know, I just feel a little bit more of like my squad is in the zone. Anyway, so Colleen sees this young family and is like, okay, this must be fine, and gets in the car. The only thing she kind of noticed, which was a little weird, was that the man looked a little dirty. Like maybe he had just gotten off of work or something, but she didn't really think that much of it. She was like, okay, whatever. And on top of this, the car is also going to Westwood. I mean...
Whoa, okay.
Amazing stuff.
What are the
like,
odds?
You're going to the exact place I'm going to. Like, this is incredible. So she gets in the car. The driver, the husband of the family, very friendly, and he starts asking a bunch of questions. And Colleen tells them that she's surprising her friend and that nobody knew she was coming to Westwood.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Once again, not saying her fault, just telling you, if you ever get in this situation, don't say that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely not her fault. It's just after we learn what happens, it's like that moment of, oh, no.
So, the ride continues on, everything's fine, but then Colleen notices that the driver keeps looking at her through the rear view mirror.
Okay.
And she's like, this is kind of weird. She's getting a little creeped out, but she tries to just calm herself down and say everything's fine, like, you're whatever. So they actually then stop at a gas station, and Colleen gets out of the car and she uses the bathroom. And while she's in the bathroom, completely by herself, she gets this overwhelming feeling like something is not right. Like her gut is talking to her. And she said she got this urge to just jump out the window and run away.
Run, yeah.
But she's like, I'm just being paranoid. This is fine. Like we said, this is a young family. They're going exactly where I'm going. Like, it's going to be fine. So then she gets back in the car. But when she gets back in the car, there's this wooden crate box thing sitting next to her in the back seat that wasn't there before.
Okay.
Thinks that's a little weird too, but she's just like, okay, whatever. They drive for about another 20 minutes, and then the driver says, hey, we kind of want to pull off the road and see some cool ice caves that are nearby. Would you mind if we made a quick stop? And Colleen didn't feel like she could say no. They were doing this favor for her, all of this stuff. And so she says, that's fine. So a little after that, the driver pulls off a dirt road and there's no one around. And so everyone except Colleen gets out of the car. Colleen's just like, oh, I'll wait for you here, whatever. But she just thinks it's weird. She's like, there's no caves around here. I don't, this is kind of weird. And then she realized she didn't know where the driver went. And then, kind of out of nowhere, Cameron, the driver, jumps back into the car and puts a knife to Colleen's throat.
Oh, crap.
Yeah. He tells her to do whatever he says, blindfolds her, and then places the head box, that soundproof, heavy, hot as fuck box, on top of her head and makes her lie down. So at this point, she can't see anything and she can't really hear much. She is completely disoriented and her senses are all fucked up.
Oh, I'm sure. And imagine, what a claustrophobic feeling.
So, and I'm sure it's hot as fuck.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh my God. Yeah, so it's just terrible. So Cameron drives everyone back to their house in Red Bluff, California. They wait there until it gets dark, and then once it's dark, they bring Colleen into the house and down to the basement. He forces Colleen to stand on this box and puts her hands up so they reach the beam that he installed in the basement and, uses these straps to tie her hands to this beam. So she's hanging by her wrists on this beam.
Right.
It must hurt so fucking bad.
Oh.
And he then cuts her clothes off and then kicks the box away. So she's has, no support under her at all.
So the only thing, how is it like her...
Her wrists are like strapped together and like they're like over the beam.
Ugh.
Yeah. So she's, freaking out and screaming. And as we know, Cameron doesn't like screaming.
No, he does not.
And he then whipped her for 10 minutes straight. He leaves briefly then, and then comes back with Janice. And the two of them have sex beneath Colleen as she's hanging there.
It's just hard to even imagine.
It's insane. Colleen has no idea what the fuck is going on, who these people are, what she's done. Like, she doesn't know. At this point, I think the head box is off, but she's still blindfolded, so she can't really see. I mean,
right.
So once Cameron and Janice are, done having sex, they leave, and then Cameron comes back downstairs and lets her down from the rafter, puts the head box back on her, and then lays her whole body in another box that he's built. This is a coffin-like box. It's not much bigger than a coffin. And he forces her in there, and there are these chains in the box that her wrists are chained to, and they kind of leave her wrists like suspended a little bit as well, which hurts.
Yeah.
And then just leaves her. And, Colleen is still freaking out. She's really struggling to breathe.
Yes.
I mean, once again, it must be so claustrophobic, hot, and weird. I mean, whatever.
And the head box was still on while she's in the coffin box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So her whole body's in this coffin-like box, wrists restrained in a painful way, and then on top of that, her head is still in a damn box.
Yep. And she's left like this until the next day.
Absolute terror.
Yeah. So when he does let her out the next day, he then puts her on the rack. Unfortunately, we're not talking about Nordstrom rack.
No.
Okay? We're talking about one of those old fucking medieval torture devices.
Right.
Where you strap the hands and the feet down to like this table thing and you stretch them out. And so he like made his own version of this.
Truly medieval torture device.
Literally. Like that's actually what it is. And he made his own version of it. And
like worse than a TV without a remote. And I know that's hard to fathom.
We didn't think it could get worse, but it does.
I know that's hard to fathom.
Yeah. So he puts her on this medieval stretcher fucking thing and leaves her there like that all day long.
It's just nasty.
Oh, it's terrible. So after she was on this fucking rack all day long, he then lets her off of this fucking thing and tries to feed her, but Colleen wouldn't eat anything. Probably because she's, scared. It could be poisoned. It could be this. It could be that. She's also probably like, I literally can't eat right now. I'm in so much pain.
Well, also, yeah, you probably don't have a fucking appetite.
Yeah, she's like, I can't fucking eat. Yeah, that pissed Cameron the fuck off. And then he punished her by chaining her back to the ceiling and whipping her again. Then he chained her back to the rack and left her there for 10 days.
Wow.
Then she was put back in the coffin-like box, and they established this routine. She was kept in that box, I believe with the head box on too, for 22 to 23 hours a day.
Insanity.
And, yeah, she was only let out to be fed a little bit, given a little bit of water, and to be tortured. She even had to use a bedpan in the fucking coffin.
Which, how can you use
She would use her feet and she would just move it up to like under her butt, basically.
Okay.
Oh, she was like naked almost all the time as well.
Oh, I'm sure.
So the torture was not just what we had listed here. There was also electrocuting. There was burning with heat lamps. And there was near drowning.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And Cameron told Colleen that if she screamed, he would cut her vocal cords and that he'd done it before. Keep that in mind. And you know what? He took pictures of everything as well, too. So many pictures of Colleen being tortured, of the torture devices. I mean, all of this shit.
Ugh. In a way, it's almost like, especially in terms of Jessica, his wife, or Janice.
Janice.
Especially in terms of Janice, his wife. It's kind of like a cult of one.
Yeah, it is.
There is a cult, even though this isn't a cult thing.
Yeah.
there is a cult-like element to it.
Yeah.
This, like, also the pictures, like, obviously I'm sure he's got his own sexual perverted reasons for the photos, but two, it's also just like the hubris of like
he thinks that he like these won't come back to bite him in the fucking ass.
Right. It's like how cult leaders today want everything they do and say filmed and recorded.
And it's like
you're just fucking creating evidence, you dumb fuck. Like
it's like I'm glad you're doing that. I'm glad you're a dumb fuck, but like you're a dumb fuck.
You're a dumb fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And that is absolutely what's happening here. So during the first month that Colleen was captured, she lost 22 pounds. And she was like a thin person when this started.
Absolutely.
And she didn't have a bath for 4 months.
Wow.
After being tortured every day.
Wow.
It was then in November that Colleen was allowed outside of the box that she was stuck in a little bit more than she used to be because Cameron wanted Colleen to do some chores around the house naked.
Wow.
And she really wouldn't do a ton of chores, just minimal stuff. He probably just got off knowing that she was like doing shit for him. And then the torture would continue, and then she was put back in the box. And this just kept going on and on and on. The only time she really had her blindfold taken off was when she was doing these chores.
Wow.
So other than that, she didn't have her blindfold taken off until about 8 months into this.
So total darkness for 8 months.
Unless she was like doing minimal chores, yeah.
Wow.
Then a little later, Cameron tells Colleen that he is a member of this group called The Company. And The Company is this secret society.
Here we go.
Yeah, possibly satanic. And this group, it was made up of very important and rich people. And this group or cult or whatever you want to call it, secret society, whatever, The Company, they would enslave and torture women for fun as well as for profit. And that they had very high-tech tracking devices and tracking squads on all of the enslaved women to monitor them and to make sure they didn't escape. But if they did escape, the company would retaliate not only by killing them, but by harming and killing their friends and family.
Wow. Now she's probably been broken down to a place that she readily believes.
Oh, so she just believes this, of course. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, so now it's not just I'm trapped by this monster and his wife. There's this whole wider organization. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, like, and this is nothing new. This is the idea of this, of a shady, powerful elite that are, manipulating things. Nothing new. And here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is, and there's a lot of evidence supports there are groups out there like that of shadowy elites that do creepy shit. But let's get one thing real. This Cameron Hooker douchebag,
he's not in it.
He's not hanging with those kinds of motherfuckers.
He's not in that fucking shit. I mean, come on.
He's not that. He's not hanging with creepy billionaires who like to torture people for fun. He's not hanging with that crowd.
I mean,
this
no
guy
one
is
we
trash.
fucking know is.
I mean,
it's like,
Yeah, this guy is scum. He's trash. That's his fucking fantasy.
Exactly. He wishes he could be in a group like this.
Yeah.
These kind of stories weren't as prevalent at the time. People didn't really know better in general than to like question this shit. People were just very afraid of that kind of shit at the time. This is kind of, the beginnings of satanic panic and whatever, not the beginnings, but this was whatever.
Yeah.
And also she has been tortured and brainwashed and completely dehumanized for months and months and months now. So of course she's going to believe this. And it's not just that. Cameron also forced Colleen to sign a slave contract.
Sounds very Scientology.
Very Scientology. It's like, goes on for, forever. And it also doesn't really make any sense because the whole point about being a slave is that you don't have say in it, so signing a contract doesn't really do anything, but, whatever. That's neither here nor there. In this contract, it also said that Colleen had to call Cameron master, Janice ma'am, that she had to kneel and bow her head if she ever were to talk to them or to ask for anything. And also that Colleen would no longer go by Colleen. Her name would now be Kay. And not K-A-Y, just the letter K.
The letter K.
And also in the contract, it doesn't say Cameron Hooker, which Colleen somehow knew that was his name at this point. I guess, I don't know if they told her, or I don't know, but it said his name was, I think, Michael Powers.
Yeah, Michael or Mark Powers. I think it was Michael Powers, yeah. It was definitely
or
Powers.
Mike Powers, yeah.
It was definitely Powers was the last name.
And he said that, like, that was the name he went by within the company, which is just like, okay, like...
How douchey.
What a detail to throw in, you fucking chode. So not long after this, Janice seems to change her mind about the whole Cameron not having penetrative intercourse. I'm assuming Cameron, like, talked Janice into this.
So they went back to the negotiating table.
Yeah, I guess you could say. But Colleen, sadly was regularly raped, and oftentimes Janice had to watch. Like, Cameron made Janice watch.
Psychopath. Yeah. Utter psychopath.
Mm-hmm. And then, this was too much for Janice, actually, and she said, I can't do this anymore, so that stopped. For a little while, at least. But Colleen still had to deal with all the other torture. And he was not just physically torturing her, he also was still molesting her, all of the stuff. It was still sexual in nature.
Right.
Then, the Hooker family decides to move to a new place. They move into a trailer, which you may think sounds weird. It's like, yes, this basement at this house. I don't know why they're moving to a trailer. I don't know if, like, money problems had anything to do with this, or maybe they just wanted more space, like more land. Like they had more land here, I guess, at the trailer than they did at their current house, so maybe that had something to do with it. We're not sure. But they moved, and when they moved, Cameron made a new, slightly bigger coffin-like box for Janice. Thank you so much. Amazing. And you know where they put that coffin-like box?
Where at, Maureen?
They put it under Cameron and Janice's waterbed.
That is the most trash, disgusting thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, they literally had Colleen under their bed. And they knew. Janice knew. Cameron knew. And they just were like, okay, that's where she'll live now. In this box under our bed.
Ugh.
And everything like this kind of continued for the next 2 years. To the point where Janice, for some fucking reason, who fucking knows why, decided that once she got pregnant again, she wanted to have a home birth.
Great.
So Janice gave birth to her second child on the bed while Colleen was laying in the coffin-like box underneath the bed.
It's almost getting into, like, Twilight Zone territory.
It's insane.
How weird it is.
It's insane.
Oh
like,
my
insanity. Insane. So, a little time goes by, and Colleen actually starts to be let outside a little bit more and more. She was allowed to watch the kids, even, when Cameron and Janice were both out. Colleen said that this was actually really helpful for her, and it kind of reminded her that there was still good in the world because they were just these innocent children.
Right.
Colleen even met the neighbors and was even allowed to go jogging by herself.
Wow.
Because Cameron was so fucking sure that Colleen was so goddamn scared of the company and what they could do to her and to her family that she would come back, and she did.
Wow.
She was then upgraded to be able to sleep in the bathroom chained to the toilet. So...
What an upgrade.
What a great upgrade.
Getting bumped to first class.
And then, very sadly and terribly, the rape started to happen again. But this time it was kept a secret from Janice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Then, now this is fucking crazy. In December of 1980, Colleen was given a present by Cameron, and this gift was that Colleen was allowed to call her family.
It just keeps getting weirder.
Yeah. So, since 1977, Colleen's family had no idea where she was.
Right.
After a few days of not hearing from her, Colleen's friends in her, her roommates in Eugene got in touch with her parents to be like, hey, she never came back from California, like we never heard from her. So Colleen's parents immediately drive out to Eugene. They start driving around, going to police departments, doing everything, file a missing persons report, do the whole goddamn thing.
Right.
And they're like, she's either dead or she joined a cult.
Wow.
I mean, keep in mind, this was the, late 70s, early 80s in California.
Right.
This was very much a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And these cults were very much like, cut off ties with your family completely and immediately. It's much harder to reach out to someone. There's no social media. There's no cell phones, all that shit.
Right.
They genuinely thought she might be in a cult.
Wow.
So when Colleen was finally able to call her family was shocked.
Absolutely.
They could not believe that Colleen was calling after all of this time. But they could tell that, something was off. She wasn't really going into much about like where she's been, what she's been doing, what's going on, anything like that. This really just made the family even more sure that she had joined a cult.
Right.
They, of course, were still very concerned for her, but they were just so grateful and relieved to hear that she was alive.
Right.
They didn't really have any information other than that she was alive, so it was hard to follow up. You can't really track a phone that easily, so they couldn't figure out where she was, but they knew she was alive, and so they were very grateful for that. Then, a little while after that, a couple months later, Cameron, I don't know if he's getting off on how in control he is of Colleen or whatever. I don't know what it is. But Cameron then allowed Colleen to actually go home to visit her family.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He told Colleen that the company was watching Colleen and they were all so pleased with her for being such a good little sex slave and they wanted to reward her. But that if she said anything about the company or tried to run away or anything, that they would not hesitate to retaliate. And they also said that they needed a proof of loyalty beforehand. So Cameron gives Colleen a gun and tells Colleen to put it in her mouth and tells her to pull the trigger. And she does. And it's empty.
Okay.
Just the
Wow.
the bullshittery, the mind fuckery. I mean, it's out of control.
Absolutely.
Absolutely out of control. He then is like, oh my God, this was great. He's like, I'm going to take you. So in March of 1981, Cameron actually himself drives her to her home in Riverside, California.
Wow.
On the way, they stop at this building because he tells her that she needs to take a lie detector test before she can go. He goes into this building for a little while, comes back out, and he's like, the company thinks you're so great and they trust you so you don't have to take a lie detector test.
Oh my God.
And sadly, this actually works on Colleen. She's relieved. She's like, oh, I'm so relieved I don't have to take this lie detector test. I was nervous about that.
Right. Yeah. There was never going to be one.
Yeah. What the fuck? So they get to her family's home and he tells her to tell her family that his name is Mike Powers.
Of course.
I don't know why the fuck he loves this goddamn name. No offense to any Mike Powerses out there, but I mean, come on. Not only to tell her family that that's his name, but that the two of them are engaged.
Wow.
So he drops her off and he leaves. And he doesn't even come back until the next day.
Wow.
So he comes back in, comes inside, comes over to pick up Colleen. And the family, Colleen's family, thinks that this is her fiance.
Wow.
And they're all interacting with him as if he's her fiance. And one of the family members actually takes a photo of Colleen and Cameron together.
Wow.
And this photo, we'll post it on our Citizens of the Milky Way group. We might post it on Instagram, but probably not because it's just, I don't know, it just seems weird. But this photo is so chilling because the both of them look so genuinely happy. Both of them.
Really?
Yes. It's not like you're like, oh.
Wow.
You're like, oh, wow. This just looks like a normal young couple. Keep in mind, they're around the same age.
Wow.
Yeah. So her family could tell that something was going on because Colleen was acting weird, but they think she's in a cult and they don't want to drive her away.
Right, of course.
And the sad thing is that if she were in a cult, that actually would have been the right thing to do.
You're right, yeah.
Because if you think someone is in a cult and you immediately are like, the cult is fucked up, you shouldn't be in that cult, they're taking advantage of you, blah, 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 they're not going to hear it, and that's going to send them even further into the arms of the cult.
Right.
So what really the most important thing for you to do is, especially in these first visits, is you need to be as welcoming and loving and supportive as possible.
Right, exactly.
So they were actually doing the right thing for what it seemed like was going on. So Cameron picks her up and they leave. But once Cameron and Colleen arrived back at the trailer, I don't know if Cameron kind of freaked himself out. He realized how close he was to blowing his cover, to losing Colleen, to all of this shit. I don't know. But things really reverted.
Wow, okay.
She wasn't really allowed to go on these jogs anymore. It was back to being in the box like 23 hours a day.
Wow.
And she lived like this, once again, just being in that box almost all the time except to be tortured. And this carried on for 3 more years.
Insanity.
Years. Until May of 1984. I mean, what in the goddamn hell?
Wow.
And it was during this time that Cameron added a photo either in or right next to this coffin box that Colleen was in.
Right.
And it was just of some young woman. And it was a woman that Colleen had no idea who she was, and the Hooker family never mentioned her or anything. So she didn't really know what was going on. But then, after this 3-year period where she was just in this fucking box, she started to be allowed a little bit more quote-unquote freedom again.
Right.
And was allowed to do chores around the house and whatever. And then she was ordered by Cameron to actually go and get a job. Surprisingly, I guess they needed the money.
Yikes, okay.
So Colleen gets a job as a cleaner at a hotel, I believe, called King's Lodge, and she had to give all the money back to Cameron, except every now and then Cameron would allow her to have 20 of her own dollars.
Jesus Christ.
And this is the same shit where he's making her feel grateful to him for allowing her to have 20 of her own dollars that she worked for.
Absolute just madness.
Yeah, it's insane. Then Cameron says that he wants more sex slaves, so he needs more space.
Oh my God.
So he starts building a goddamn shed dungeon fucking thing in their backyard and has Colleen help him build it, and tells her that she is going to teach all the others to be such a good sex slave like she is.
Wow. I mean, it sounded like a Nexium.
It sounded like Nexium, but turned up to goddamn 11.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it does.
Right.
And around this time, Janice finds out that Cameron has started raping Colleen again.
Ugh.
And Janice is pissed. But Cameron starts using and quoting, what do you think I'm going to say?
The Bible?
There it is, come on, the Bible. He brings the Bible into it, especially the Old Testament, and he starts using these quotes and these passages and this, whatever the hell.
Yeah.
And he's using it to excuse and explain all the stuff that he's doing and all the actions towards Colleen and everything. And that it was Janice's wifely duty to accept and support it.
Yikes!
But that's not all. Cameron is also really wanting a threesome.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh no.
He's wanting it. He's wanting it. He's wanting it with Janice and Colleen. Apparently he had been pushing for this shit for years.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
And Janice was always like, no, I don't, no. But Cameron, the Bible's in play now.
Right.
So Cameron's like, look, have you ever heard of Abraham? And then he tells the whole story about Abraham and Sarah and them not being able to have a child and them being like, now I'm not I'll be honest with the squad here. I don't know my Bible too well, but there is, the whole thing with Abraham and, laying, his wife couldn't have a baby, laying with someone else, and then the baby would be given to his wife, this whole thing. And that is actually the passage that is used a lot in The Handmaid's Tale, the show and the book.
He's looking for his Hagar.
I guess so. I literally don't know.
Wow.
Couldn't tell you the details, but that is a thing. And so he was like, no, this is, kosher, quite literally. Come on, we're having fun. It's not kosher, but you understand what I mean. But then Cameron kicks it up another goddamn notch. And he's like, not only do I want to have a threesome, I actually want Colleen to be my second wife, not just a sex slave.
Wow, okay.
He became really taken with Colleen. Now, let's remember that Janice has been groomed by Cameron since she was 15 years old. And at this point, she's 26.
Wow.
So, I mean, she witnessed him committing all these terrible acts at a young age, did them to her. I mean, all of this stuff. But at this point, she starts to kind of be like,
Yeah.
Now, was she actually feeling guilty? Or did she just want Colleen out of the damn way?
Yeah.
A little bit of both. Regardless, whatever it was, the Bible kind of ended up being Cameron's undoing because it kind of opened up the mind of Janice.
Right, exactly.
You know, kind of learning more about religion and stuff. And so she was like, oh yeah, like this is what we're doing is actually bad.
Yeah.
Which is like, bitch, like, come on, you're driving me crazy. But I understand you're a victim too, so I don't know. So it's then, I believe it is August. It is early August when Janice feels like enough is enough. And she tells Colleen that the company isn't real.
Wow.
She's like, hey, Cameron made this up. No one's watching you.
Right.
Colleen, understandably, is upset
Oh, yeah.
and is like, what the fuck? This is not good. But they both decide to not tell Cameron anything.
Okay.
Don't tell Cameron that they are both in the loop about this whole company thing because they don't know what he's going to do.
Right.
So the next day after Cameron goes to work, Janice and Colleen take the kids and go to Janice's parents' home. From there, Colleen calls her parents and asks them to wire her money so that she can buy a bus ticket home.
Wow, okay.
And they do. And she buys a bus ticket. Surprisingly, possibly, or maybe not, I don't know. Colleen then calls Cameron and tells him she's leaving.
Wow, okay. Yeah, it's funny. Even though she's ready to go, she still feels the need
Yeah.
to, like, tell him. Yeah, yeah.
So Cameron, like a little fucker, starts bawling, just starts crying and crying and crying over the phone, begging her to stay, whatever. But surprisingly, Colleen stands her ground.
Good.
She gets on that bus, and after 7 years of this, she's finally free.
Wow.
I mean, she was abducted when she was 20, and now she's 27.
Wow.
Think about how different you are from when you're 20 to when you're 27.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, wow. So Colleen gets home, and, you know, she tells her family a little bit about what happened, but she didn't really tell them everything. And her family immediately is like, you need to report this.
Yeah.
But it's just too much. It's too much. She can't. Now, Janice, she stayed away from Cameron for about a week. And then she returned home with her kids to Cameron. When she returned home, Cameron apparently was, you know, really trying hard to make things work and, you know, like being so nice and whatever. And Janice told Cameron to destroy everything, destroy the pictures, destroy the, you know, torture devices, like all of this shit.
Yeah.
But Janice was so worried and paranoid that Cameron was just going to snap and kill her and the kids. So about a month and a half after that, she then goes back to her parents' house.
Right.
Now, this is crazy. Colleen actually stayed in touch with Janice and Cameron.
Wow.
Yeah, like talking on the phone and shit. And Janice and Colleen decided that Cameron could be reformed.
Oh, my God.
And Janice begged Colleen not to turn Cameron in. And Colleen agreed. She was like, first of all, I just want to move the fuck on.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And not deal with this. A lot of people that have been abused feel this way, and I completely understand that. You
Right.
don't want to have to go through all of it again.
Right.
But you got to do it. But I understand why you don't want to, of course. But the other part of it is major Stockholm Syndrome.
I'm sure.
For those of you who don't know Stockholm Syndrome, look at, do a little Goog, read the history about it. It's very interesting. But essentially, it's the idea that you're so empathetic towards your abuser or abductor or whoever it is that you actually begin to have feelings for them.
Right.
Not always romantic, but sometimes romantic.
Right, yes.
And you know what? Colleen ended up being genuinely grateful for these quote-unquote freedoms that Cameron was giving her because her mind was so fucked up.
Right.
Like, she was so grateful to him that he allowed her to get in touch with her family.
Right.
And Colleen said that she even told Cameron that she loved him.
Wow.
And part of it was just because she was trying to just go along with whatever he was doing. It just made things easier, the torture less intense, all of this stuff if she just went along with it.
Right.
But also, like I said, it was just this, her brain was fucked.
Yeah.
Like totally fucked. So she just like didn't know what the fuck was going on. But in November of 1984, Janice couldn't take it anymore. And she went to a pastor and she admitted her guilt.
Oh, so are we coming full circle to where the story started?
Mm-hmm. So, and that is when the detective Shamblin was sent out to the Church of Nazarene, and Janice told him all about Colleen Stan, as well as the kidnapping and murder of MarLiz Spanicky.
Wow.
Now, the police thought this story was very far-fetched, and they didn't really believe it. It was just too crazy. But they interviewed Colleen, and their stories matched up, and also they searched the trailer, and surprise, sir-fucking-prise,
yeah,
Cameron didn't destroy any of that shit.
What a dumb fucker.
Yeah, so there was just evidence everywhere. In 1985, there was a trial, and over 100 pieces of physical evidence were a part of this trial.
Wow.
They left the coffin-like box in the middle of the courtroom for the whole trial, so people could imagine what it really would have been like for them to be in that box for so long.
Incredible.
They brought in the real head box, showed it to everyone. I mean, that is chilling as fuck.
Right.
But the problem was, a lot of people, especially people on the jury, could not understand why Colleen stayed. They couldn't get it. They could not understand why she stayed for so long.
Right.
Especially at the time, people just, you didn't hear about shit like this.
And I understand, from an outsider perspective, even though we know about mentally what can happen to you and how it's not so easy to just leave.
Yeah.
No, it is easy from an outsider perspective to be like, oh my God, leave. It's because when you're in it, you're not seeing the whole puzzle.
Yeah.
You're just seeing aspects, you know what I mean? Yeah.
And coercive control is a very real thing, and it's very hard to point out. It's tough. And even today, that's a thing that is a really hard thing to prove in a courtroom. You know, like you and I and people listening to this, I'm sure, know more about it because we're all freaks and know about this shit.
Right.
But your average person may have never have heard of anything like this, so they can't even imagine it. But thankfully, there was an expert that came into the court to give, a statement or a testimony or whatever. And this expert's opinion really helped make the jury understand how this thing can really happen and how coercion and manipulation and control really affects someone and changes the way that they think and function, and how, depriving someone of basic human rights can just destroy someone.
Right.
It could destroy their brain. And this reminds me again about cults. This is like a cult of one, or in this case, like a cult of two. It's Janice and Colleen. But, from the defensive side, Cameron was claiming that Colleen consented to all of this and that enjoyed this relationship, and that Cameron did feel bad about the whole situation around the 1 year mark, and he had tried to set Colleen free, but he just, couldn't get rid of her because she had fallen so deeply in love with him.
Oh my God, that was his defense?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yep. It's insane. So, at the end of the trial, Cameron Hooker was found guilty on all charges and was sentenced to 104 years in prison.
All right, so he'll die there.
The judge called him, quote, the worst psychopath I have ever dealt with.
Wow.
Now, very sadly and unfortunately, MarLiz was never brought up in the trial. There was no charges filed against Cameron Hooker or Janice. Well, yeah, Janice had immunity, so she was never charged, but, nothing was also ever charged to Cameron in reference to MarLiz because there was no body.
Right.
And there was no hard evidence connecting him to MarLiz.
Right.
Even though the photo that was in or next to the coffin-shaped box that Colleen kept looking at
was
MarLiz.
Wow.
The prosecution couldn't even mention MarLiz in the trial, even though they really wanted to because, there was technically no evidence. But
Right.
Colleen Stan has absolutely no doubt that Cameron Hooker killed MarLiz.
Of course.
Now, back to Jodie Foster
Yes, the haunting.
from the very beginning with the dang haunting. So after she had moved out of the house or the apartment that MarLiz had moved into, things had really stopped, but she was still having these dreams. And in these dreams, there was a tall man and a short woman, and they were stalking someone. And she kept hearing the number 35.76. 35.76.
This is in her dream.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
And she also saw the letter A and the number 17.
Are these coordinates?
They're not coordinates, no. But she thought it was a location, maybe, of some kind. Was it a road, a distance? And she also got the feeling that maybe this was like in the northeasterly way from Chico. So she just gets this feeling like, stop what you're doing and call the police and tell them about this. So in 2008, she does. She calls the police and she says that she had possible information about MarLiz Spanicki's case and also about a potential grave site for her body.
Okay.
And Kevin Hale, the chief investigator who was speaking with her on the phone, was so shocked. He then told Jodie that they were in the middle of opening up MarLiz's cold case.
Oh.
Which is crazy, because when a case goes cold like MarLiz's, it's not like people continue working on it all the time.
Exactly.
The case is considered cold, and they kind of put it away for a while until they have the money or the time or the resources or whatever.
Right.
And then they open the case back up, and that's what they were doing at the time when Jodie called. So he's like, this is bizarre.
Right.
He said he had never been so freaked out. So she met with Detective Hale, and he asked her all sorts of questions about these dreams.
Right.
But since it was an ongoing investigation, Detective Hale could neither confirm nor deny anything that Jodie was saying.
Right.
In August of 2021, Jodie and Detective Hale actually met up, and Detective Hale was able to give Jodie more information about what they knew and about how the information Jodie gave helped them. And they were able to kind of confirm this with more detailed interviewing and statements from Janice that Janice gave after Jodie called in 2008.
Right.
The police reached back out to Janice, and once again she was like, I'll only talk if I'm still good to go. I'm still immune.
Right.
And they were like, yeah. So she talks more, and they got a little more information out of her, a little bit of a better idea about where MarLiz is buried. And it turns out that the direction from the house in Red Bluff to the area where they think MarLiz is buried is 35.77 miles.
Wow.
And the number she had in her dream was 35.76.
Wow. Very fascinating.
It was off of Road A17.
Wow. Incredible.
Jodie feels like she has always been, and same with her daughter Hannah, has always been one of those people that is just more in tune with that type of thing, with the other side, is very empathetic, all of these things. So it's not like she's one of these people that's seeing ghosts constantly, but she's just very sensitive to energies.
Right.
And, she hopes that MarLiz's soul can find peace. Now, as we mentioned before, Cameron was in jail, was put in prison for 104 years. Over the years, he has requested parole time and time again, and they were always denied. But then he became eligible for parole in 2021.
Oh boy, okay.
California has this program called California's Elderly Parole Program, which means that if the offender is over 60 years old and has served over 25 years of their sentence, they can get out, potentially. So as far as I know, Cameron is currently being reviewed for his sexually violent predator status and is currently being held in a mental health hospital. He is going to go to trial in October of 2023. So we will update you that again once we get closer to that. But he could get out. We're hoping to God
Yeah.
that the powers that be in California realize that this man is not reformed.
Yes.
And is still a huge threat to all of the women in Northern California,
Yes.
as well as anyone, but especially the women, and that he should not get out. And I don't think he's going to,
Right, yeah.
but it could happen in October.
And it seems as though MarLiz is almost reaching out for her own sense of she needs closure now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Janice changed hers and her children's names and has started a brand new life. Sounds like she became a social worker, which, Jesus Christ, I'm glad you're getting healing and are learning more about mental health, but like, maybe that's not the job for you. I gotta be honest, like, I know having a mental health professional that really was in a cult or really was dealt with these certain things can be very helpful because they can understand on an even deeper level, and I agree with that.
Right.
But this, I think, takes it a bit too far. Like, if I found out that my therapist or social worker or whatever had done this shit, I would be like, what the fuck? So, I don't know. Now, Colleen, unfortunately, she has, permanent chronic injuries from this.
I would be shocked if she didn't.
She, mainly what I heard was shoulder and spinal injuries.
Wow.
As well as very, intense PTSD.
Of course.
But you know what? She has a daughter, she has a grandchild, and now she also works with victims of abuse. I think this makes sense for her.
Absolutely.
And every year, her family celebrates the anniversary of her escape/release.
I'm still fascinated if Janice is a social worker.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
I fucking know. It's
Wow.
terrible. But so good for Colleen. And MarLiz's family is, of course, happy that Cameron Hooker is behind bars. But they still feel like there needs to be justice officially for MarLiz.
Absolutely.
Because, Cameron Hooker has not been charged with anything involving MarLiz. So it's grisly and it's grim, but we hope the body is found and that this can offer finally some closure for MarLiz's family and friends.
Maureen, thank you so much for preparing this episode.
I mean,
what a ride. It's
a big one, a wild ride. I mean, God damn it.
It started as a haunting and became something completely different, but I think now is the right time for those sources.
Oh, that's right. I would have forgotten, Dylan. Thank you for reminding me. First, we have a lovely YouTube video called Abducted and Locked in a Box for 7 Years, The Evil and Sadistic Cameron Hooker by Danielle Kirsty. Then we have The Woodworking Wacko Psychopath Cameron Hooker by Bailey Sarian. Then we have a great episode of Unsolved Mysteries, the new reboot on Netflix. The episode is called The Ghost in Apartment 14. Then we have a couple articles. One is What Happened to Marie Elizabeth Spanicky, the true Unsolved Mysteries story by Molly Mitchell at Newsweek. An article called Did a Couple Who Kept a Victim Captive for 7 Years Kill Missing Teen Marie Elizabeth Spanicky by Aaron Rasmussen at Investigation Discovery. Then one called The Girl in the Box Speaks How I Survived Being Held Captive for 7 Years by Nicole Weisseny-Egan at People Magazine.
Nice. Maureen, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Well, something to cheer us all up here. I
yeah.
got a list. It's the names of our top tier Patreon subscribers.
Here we go.
Of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finished Face via Lungfist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the Oh So Suave Sean Richardson, the British Bone Breaker, Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the Killer Stud Carl Staub, the Firestarter Heather Carter, the Conqueror Christopher Damian Damaris, the Awfully Awesome Annie, the Murderous Maggie Leach, the Sort of Sexy Sam Hackworth, the Evil Elizabeth Riley, Lauren Hellfire, Hernandez Lopez, the Maniacal Laura Maynard, the Vicious Karen Van Buren, the Arch Nemesis Aaron Bird, the Sadistic Sergio Castillo, the Rapscallion Ryan Crum, the Beast Benjamin Huang, the Devilish Chris Doucette, the Psycho Sam, the Electric Emily Zhang, the Renegade Corey Ramos, the Crazed Carlos, the Antagonist Andrew Park, the Monstrous Michaela Schur, the Witchy Wonder J.P. Weimer, the Freaky Ben Forsyth, and the Barbaric Andrew Barry. Oh, Momo, thank you again.
Wow. But Dylan, thank you so much for listing off those wonderful, wonderful names. We are so grateful and appreciative
Of course.
all of you. Oh my God. We love our top tier Patreon subscribers and all of our Patreon subscribers and all of you for listening. Thank you for joining us today.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.